Get ready for the greatest roast of all time, the Roast of Tom Brady, a Netflix live event happening May 5th. Hosted by Kevin Hart, the 7-time world champion gets his cleats held to the fire by famous friends and frenemies on an unforgettable night where everything is fair game. Tune in on May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the Roast of Tom Brady, live only on Netflix.
You ready?
Showtime.
On May 3rd, summer starts with The Fall Guy.
Let's do it later.
Let's drink a spicy margarita.
Make some bad decisions.
Yes!
Audiences are falling in love with the most entertaining film of the year.
Fall Guy.
Fall Guy?
Fall guy.
That's what the poster said.
See Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt in the movie critics say exists to make you happy.
Trying to make it out?
Nope.
Because I don't either. It's not what I'm into right now.
What are you into?
Talking.
Yeah.
The Fall Guy. Only in theaters May 3rd. Rated PG-13.
Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Sunday evening by Zencaster is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, we heard from the Islanders on Cleanout Day. We heard from Patrick Waugh on Cleanout Day. And we even heard from Lou Lamoriello. And we didn't have to wait 8 weeks to hear from Lou Lamoriello. He was right there with everybody else for the first time in a couple of years. Everybody sort of had their say, had their time in front of the cameras and the microphones and gotten everything off their chest before they head out to wherever vacation spot they've chosen. We're going to go through a bunch of them, probably not all of them, but a bunch of them. But what was your kind of overall takeaway from whatever videos of these guys that you've watched and sort of the tone of everything? We're going to talk players first and then Lou a little bit later. But what was the kind of the overall tone you took away from what we saw on Friday and all these different videos?
I think that the tone is kind of what reflected it reflected what Islander fans feel a little bit, which is that it's time. Like it's time for this team to shake things up a bit, to figure out a jolt to this roster and build around the core of like Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat, Dobson, Romanov, Sorokin, or just like the goaltenders at large, and kind of move past the 2019 Islanders core, and it just felt like these guys were like, look, we gave it everything we got, considering the template here, and we tried our best. It doesn't make sense just keep going back to the well, and I thought that was reflected in the players. Thought it was reflected from Lamoriello, and I think it was reflected kind of in how it was covered by everybody as well, that it's gonna be tough to watch the Islanders with somebody else wearing 17 or 15 or whatever, and right. Like it'll be tough, and who knows who Lou could wake up tomorrow and fire off, or the team's Twitter account could fire off 3 extensions for guys that were like, oh, I thought we were moving on. But it does feel like the writing's on the wall a bit here, for at least some of the guys. And the only surprise I would say from the entire locker room cleanout day was that Lou Lamoriello showed up in physical form. Like that was it. Yeah. Otherwise there was no surprises, because as you said, it's been funny that one of the underreported things among many from the Islanders over the years is that the Lou has bucked the tradition of locker room cleanout and season end media meetings where the GM shows up and the coach, it's like players, coach, then the GM for the Islanders. If you remember last year, Lou was like in a bunker trying to figure out how the
Right.
Islanders lost Game 6, and it took them the entire summer to find out what happened in Game 6. And the summer before that, I don't think he showed up either, because that was the weird one where Trotz was gone like a week later, right? So, so that was the only surprise, really. Everything to me seems like the Islanders and fans are weirdly in lockstep as we enter the kind of weird part of the offseason where it's not really the offseason yet.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I definitely, got the sense that everybody kind of sees some changes coming, but nobody seems to want to make any changes, which is kind of like the weird paradox that the Islanders are in. Everybody realizes that something needs to change, but nobody really wants to leave or or be gone. We're going to dive into all this, but before we do, reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Membership means ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. A little bit more on what's coming up this week a little bit later. So sign up today, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. And yeah, I thought that so basically I had them on kind of in the background while I was working on Friday. So I was kind of listening to them more than watching them. And a couple of things stood out. There's a talking point that kept coming up that I want to get to in a minute. But I remember first was Anders Lee. And listen, you can say whatever you want about Lee as a player, but he's a very astute and a very intelligent guy. And I thought his availability was pretty much set the tone for everybody, which kind of also happens on the ice. Like, wherever Lee goes, the Islanders go. And his was like the longest, and it wasn't anything revelatory, but I felt like everybody after that kind of took the cues from him. And it was like Palmieri, Horvat, Nelson. I will give Nelson a lot of credit. He dropped the word love probably a dozen times in his like 5-minute discussion. He loves these guys. He loves playing here. He loves being on the team. And so I appreciate that from Brock. Plus with the gray hairs, he is, become sort of this, an avatar for a new age of player. And I appreciate seeing that from him. And it kind of going on and on. And then Matt Barzell's pops up, and the tone of his voice and the tenor of his voice was totally different than everybody else's. And this was a guy who sounded very upset, for lack of a better word. It sounded like, and I'm not trying to impugn his masculinity or blow up his spot or anything. I sincerely mean this. It sounds like he had either been crying or was on the verge of tears before taking, the to the locker room and having talking. And his voice was definitely different than everybody else. And he was very upset. He was really rattled. And it reminded me of something you and I have talked about after, I think it wasn't even after their 7-game loss to the Lightning in 2021. I believe it was after their 2020 loss to the Lightning, where Barzell was clearly very, very upset. And he talked about how he wasn't even mad that they lost because of his career and his future, but because he wanted to win badly for Josh Bailey and Andy Green and the older guys that are on the team that, this might be their only try at this, the last try at this. And so I kind of got that vibe from it. And, it would kind of affected me. Like that was the one where I kind of stopped and watched what he was saying. He just was a guy, he wasn't mean or anything to anybody, but he was very like agitated. And he was like, this was a guy who, it's such a cliche to be like, oh, these guys really want to win. I'm sure they all want to win. But he came off as a guy who really, 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 really was mad that they didn't win. I'll get to the talking point in a minute, but did you get a chance to watch Barzell's thing and like come away with a similar kind of impression?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that was after they lost in 2021.
Okay.
And that was a really kind of hilarious week of interviews when you kind of separate yourself from the emotion of it. Because if you remember, the Islanders had lost 8-0 or whatever it was in Game 5, and after that loss, they kind of all came out and said, it's just one game. It doesn't matter how you win or lose. And Barzell, there was kind of talk of whether he was going to be suspended or not because he took a penalty in that game that was a little dirty or whatever. Then they won that crazy Game 6, and the Islanders, in one of my favorite Lou Lamoriello moves ever, before Game 7 against the Lightning, you'd think, okay, like if this, we're going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second half. Spoiler alert. And if like the Maple Leafs were in that situation, Game 7, they just had a crazy Game 6 win, beer bottles beer cans on the ice, and Nassau Coliseum, maybe its last game ever, or the Islanders go to their first Stanley Cup in forever, and they're going to Tampa for Game 7 against this juggernaut. They're the underdogs, the scrappy underdogs. If a team like Toronto was in that situation, the media circus would be dialed up to 12, to steal a line from Chris Johnston that I just saw come across Twitter about 5 minutes ago. And the press conference would be Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Mitch Marner and whoever else, and obviously Tavares and Morgan Riley, and you know what cologne these guys would be wearing from the beat writers that are around them. All the media members wearing playoff beards too, because they're part of the team.
Sure.
And Lou, instead of following that playbook, who did the media before Game 7?
That's
for
right.
the Islanders in 2 golf shirts. Travis Zajac and Andy Green. And I'll never forget it. But and then so you go from that to Barzal, that quote that has stuck with us forever. I'm trying to do this for Bales and Green, and I think from that moment on, I've just kind of gained in a different appreciation for Matt Barzal, which is that he gets it much more than I thought he would. Before those playoff runs, because this guy, he's so intelligent in terms of just the league and how professional sports work and not taking stuff for granted, and what it means to be an Islander, like the good and the bad of that, and the baggage that you carry as an Islander, and how it's only known to a specific group of people that understand what you're fighting for. He gets it, and that sort of came out too when he signed the extension and talked about how he thought being a one jersey guy would be really cool, and he like his favorite players were all one jersey guys in other sports, and he always wanted that, and his respect for Lamoriello and like the kind of way he carries himself and such. And then this kind of I don't know, like the tone was, like you said, it was borderline sad. Like it was somewhere in like the Venn diagram of sad, disappointed. Like it was just still very raw, which is
raw is good.
Makes you feel better, because like we feel that way too, right? It's as we keep saying, like the biggest Islander fans on the planet right now are Matt Barzal and Patrick Waugh, and that's how it felt, right? It felt like he was, that could have been, Matty the Usher giving that.
It's true.
That pro season cleanout day press conference where he's like acknowledging, we came up short. It sucks. I'm mad about it. I'm mad that we didn't win the Stanley Cup again, and I also mad because I understand the mission here is or was to win the Stanley Cup with these guys who have been Islanders for life. One of them said he wants to die an Islander. Matt Martin is like well on his way to being a Nassau County executive. This is he understands like that he was carrying that, and now it's probably over. The mission now changes, and it was inevitable that it changes, and it's probably for the better. To as Lamoriello said, you can't like we love loyalty, but you can't let loyalty impede progress.
Right. That was his big thing. Yeah.
And I think that's not lost on Barzal, and I think he's mad that he just, maybe it's like just mad at they never got over the hump together. They got close, they did it this time. Of course, they came up very short in terms of the playoffs, but I think he just realizes it, and he's probably really ticked off because I think he understands how cool it would have been to be a part of something like that if it worked.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, who knows what the future holds for these guys? They might not be Islanders next year, and then he's not going to have Clutterbuck or Martin, or maybe somebody else, who knows, in the locker room. And Raw is a good one. And it's funny because this was 2 days after they lost. And like you would expect that kind of raw emotion to come out immediately after they lost, but it's 2 days later. I think most of us have kind of like moved on and thought about it, and not come away, and being less bad, but more like you'd think you would have calmed down a little bit. But not Matt Barzal. He's still just as pissed off as he was when they lost Game 5 in Raleigh on Friday, and when he was on Wednesday, or Tuesday, I should say. But the other thing that stuck out to me and again, Barzell said this, and just about everybody else said this too. And this sort of became the talking point, was that, we felt that the series was a lot closer than it seemed, and we were right there. And we heard the line, we were right there just now as well, from another team we'll talk about later. But, on one hand, I heard everybody say that, I heard Lee say this, and I'm almost certain I heard Palmieri say this, and then I'm almost certain I heard Martin or Bortuzzo or somebody else say this, and Nelson and Barzell and Horvat for sure. And I thought to myself, for the first couple of times, I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. It was a lot closer. I mean, you could make the argument they outplayed the Hurricanes in games 1 and 3. Obviously, game 2 was a disaster. Game 4, they won, and then game 5, they were right with until the third period, fell apart in 8 seconds and 2 unlucky goals. But then, after hearing it for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, whatever time, I started thinking like, okay, first of all, this is obviously the talking point that these guys want us to all understand, that they thought they were closer than the series appeared. And that's fine. Everybody, I'm sure, says that after 5 games. Or Rod Brindamore said a win is a sweep, not a sweep, when the Hurricanes get swept, apparently. But after a while, I thought to myself, there's a difference between trying to extract, the good from a series loss and feeling better about yourselves. You don't want to throw everything out, all at once. And maybe kind of diluting yourself a little bit. And maybe that's a little bit harsh, but like, part of me also kind of is still mad about this. And I'm also like, I don't want these guys to kind of think that they're closer than they are. I mean, this is 2 years in a row, the same opponent, that they haven't gotten out of the first round. Obviously, they missed the playoffs a year before that. It's pretty clear that while they can hang with the Hurricanes, beating them is an entirely different story. And beating them in a playoff series is an entirely different story at that. And then that opens up an entire other book of like, well, okay, if these guys can't beat Carolina, if they could finish third in the division, hey, that's great. They're better than Philly. They're better than Pittsburgh. They're better than Columbus, New Jersey. Okay, fine. But then if you can't beat the Hurricanes, then how are you going to do against the Rangers? How are you going to do against the Bruins or the Panthers? Or, assuming you beat those guys against Vegas or Dallas or Colorado or whoever. And it's just like, I don't want these guys, I don't want them to go away, thinking that their life, their season was a waste of time, like as we've talked about. But I also don't want them thinking that, it's just we're right there and all we got to do is play again. I forget who it was. I think it was Sorokin who was like, I'd rather, if I could play on Monday, I would, but I got to go on vacation. And that's great. But at the same time, I don't want them to like, we talked about this off the top. There needs to be change. Something needs to be changed so that this team can find a new direction. We need to put 2018, 19, 20, 21 behind us. That's for me as much as anybody else. And I think these guys need to embrace the idea that they have to change. And I don't want them thinking like hanging on to this idea that like, oh man, another bounce and we would have beaten them. Yeah, maybe, but there's also 2 years in a row that you lost to these same guys with a difference of 1 game. So after a while, I think that talking point started to kind of have a less of an effect, and I started getting a little bit mad and I kept hearing about it because I'm like, guys, again, I'm not trying to totally impugn what you think. It was close. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot closer than it might seem, but also you guys need to change. Something needs to change. And if not, you're not going to get over that hump. You're not going to, it's just going to be the same result over and over again. Because I mean, right now, there's probably a high likelihood the same exact thing would happen again next year too. Like, if everything kind of stayed the same. So we don't want that. But I mean, did you pick up on that from like these guys all basically saying the same thing for the most part, particularly with that line, like it was closer than we thought?
Yeah. And like you said, I agree with them on like an individual game to game basis outside of game 2. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But like you said, you lost in 5. You're now against this Rod Brindamore Hurricanes team. This version of the Islanders is now it combined 3-12. So like we're all with you. It was frustrating, but it's okay to say something's frustrating.
Yeah.
And it could have went either way, but when it goes one way all the time, that means that you're just not better than they are. So you have to find a way to close that gap to make sure that when the bounces are going one way, it's not going to be a death sentence.
Right. It reminds me
But
of
yeah, I'm
somebody's line about the Yankees Red Sox rivalry back before 2004 when somebody's like, why is this a rivalry? The Yankees always win. I don't understand why this isn't a rivalry. No, it's only one-sided. I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. It's, they, to them, the Red Sox aren't a rival. They're just another team that we beat all the time. So anyway, but that's kind of
yeah,
what.
and it's incredibly frustrating because for as a fan, you sit through it and you're like, God, this we feel closer. Then you got the the Hurricanes kind of bandwagon celebrating a series victory against the Islanders as if they just upset the Red Army team and like they're moving on. And you're like, well, you guys beat a team that you were huge favorites against, and now you're gonna absolutely fall on your face
Yeah.
against the Rangers, which has already started.
That
and
made the playoff in 81,
Yeah, right. Yeah, a team that is like historically insane, historically crazed, historically manic, maybe the most manic team in NHL history. And so congratulations. It's not going to look like that next round. Even though you guys threw a little mini parade for yourselves and grew the game with all your funny tweets. Good luck growing the game when the Rangers are clipping at 46% on a power play in the next series. You're gonna let us all down. So, but yeah, that's frustrating. I always think that when there's always cliche stuff that's said in these breakout days, and I was at one once when I was working with Stan at MSG, and I was. It was the Islanders had just lost that series against the Penguins, and I'm talking about another one that was just closer than it seemed, and the Islanders just couldn't get a save, and the Penguins had Tomas Vokoun as their backup. The Islanders had Kevin Poulin, and that was the difference. And I just remember that day thinking, man, these guys, like they just know how to kind of move on, like and get ready, and they're all in like flip flops and shorts and. Like you said, getting ready for the vacation. But when the cameras turn on, like they know exactly how to pretend like, oh yeah, my bags aren't packed. We're close. I'm so excited to come back in September. And maybe there are, but like that's just how it is with sports these days. And they're just so coached in what to say and what not to say during these things that when someone like Matt Barzal does his he's not. He's like much more allowed to be off the cuff, and he does a good job of it. And the other guys kind of just like lean into the playbook too much. But so I don't necessarily get mad at them for saying that stuff because I know what they mean. And like Adam Pelech or Ryan Pollock's not going to be like, yeah, we gotta get rid of Martin and Clutterbuck. Like we gotta like allow some new blood to come in. So I understand, but yeah, they weren't that close. And so that's it's a weird day. If there's also no like the past few off seasons we were going into kind of like there was a lot more question marks around like what the Islanders were going to do in the off season. I feel like and without that it wasn't as do you remember 2 years ago when they had the locker room breakout day and Casey Zizekas wore just a gray sweatshirt?
Yes. Yeah.
And everyone's like, he's not wearing Islanders gear. He's out. And then like 3 weeks later, he's like, I'm a dying Islander.
Right.
So like there was none of that like Zapruder filming. So that was took I guess a little bit of the intrigue out of it. And of course when Lou showed up, it was like, you just like, okay, I'm not gonna believe anything that's said here at all, except for if it comes from Lamoriello or I guess like like you said Barzal and Horvat saying I think we gotta like add guys or something. But yeah, other than that, I felt like it was like you said, just a lot of guys leaning into the we gave it our you know what, it was a lot of guys reading from the John Tavares how to be a captain playbook. Just say it starts with me. We'll get better tomorrow. We're very close, and this is a tight knit group. And just be on. Then head out to the Amalfi Coast or wherever.
Every team in the NHL we're finding out is the most tight group ever. By the way, it's not just the Islanders; it's everybody. They're the most tight group. But yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely out of the John Tavares playbook, and definitely like I don't know. It becomes just, it kind of gets mashed up, and I don't know. It started to bother me after a while, but it's not 100% wrong. But yeah, it is funny how they say something, and then you have to kind of like wait to see in the future how it actually works. But that's the perfect segue to talk about Lou Lamoriello, the somewhat of a surprise guest at Friday's breakout day. I wonder if owners were like, dude, don't pull that shit again that you did last year. You got to talk to these people. And he sat with Patrick Waugh, and they had a combination interview together. It's about 15 or 16 minutes long. Waugh does not say much. And to be honest, this isn't really about him. The Skates at the Stakes guys made the good point that like his job was to show up and get this team to the playoffs with the time that he had remaining. And he accomplished that. And, there were times when we saw a change in strategy that worked. And there were times when, they looked like the team that had played under Lane Lambert for a year and a half. And I don't know if you can say that he did anything necessarily wrong in the series against the Hurricanes, except with the possible exception of playing Ilya Sorokin in game 3. Obviously that backfired, didn't work. Varlamov didn't look great in game 2, but then really no Islander did. So that's the one thing that it seemed like, we can quibble about, but Waugh did the job he was asked to do, get this team into the playoffs. And it's pretty clear that the players all liked playing for him. Like they all had good things to say about him, except maybe Hudson Fashion. We'll get to him just before the break in a second. But, Lou kind of took the reins of this whole thing and did most of the talking. He opened by saying that the gentleman here in front of you will be back next year, which apparently was like a direct dig at Andrew Gross and an article that he had written about, what these guys were going to do. Lou and Andrew go back to their days with the Devils, I believe. I'm pretty sure Andrew covered them while he was with covering the Devils. So and Lou was there too. So I don't think it's that kind of thing, because Lou was smiling as he is wont to do in these things. It's the kind of, again, you read about it and you're like, oh, what is he saying? And then you watch it and you're like, everybody was laughing. He was having a good time. So, but who wasn't having a good time were Islanders fans who thought that, Lou might be on the hot seat a little bit here. And he kind of put that to bed right away. So, I mean, we might as well start there. We cannot be surprised that Lou Lamoriello was not let go, especially once they made the playoffs. If they had missed the playoffs, then you can make the argument, okay, look, this is where we divest our involvement with Lou, and he, they bring in a new GM, even though the coach is already here and signed for a couple more years. But like where are you at when this came out? I mean, again, we didn't talk about this. I don't think either of us thought Lou was not going to be back next year, but for him to be like, yeah, we're going to be back next year, like that kind of just blew the lid off of that whole thing. And I mean, what did that make you feel like when you saw that come across the wire, or when you watched it, on the video later on?
Yeah, I love when Lou does those little kind of digs at a specific writer. I think he's had a couple for
it's too long and it's for too much money is the classic
one. I think he had one with Ethan Sears, and he's had some other ones as well. And so it's always cracks me up, because you think that he's the type of guy that doesn't read or listen to anything anyone says. He might not, but he knows what is said. And so that was great. And you could hear Andrew like being very bashful. Being like, no, I didn't mean it like that. Like, very Lou moment. And as we always say, like Lou has some significant flaws as a team, as a roster builder, and he's had some swings and misses, as any GM has had. But it's always more entertaining than not to have him as your general manager. So and sports are supposed to be entertaining, and having an 83-year-old, I guess next season is his age 83 season. So as a general manager, and it cracks me up, and it should never be lost on anybody. Like I know people think like they make the low hanging fruit jokes about Lou, but instead of doing that, just let it hit you in the face that this guy's 83 and he's the general manager of this team in the modern NHL, where Larry Brooks is pining for the Islanders to catch up with the league. I liked his article today. I was like, did you just read? Did you do a search on The Athletic of every Islander article written and just summarize them there? That was great, because that's what it felt like. But I wasn't surprised that he was coming back, and like you said, the only thing that was surprising was that he was there physically. How he announced it, But yeah, this is the new nucleus of the front office is him and Wah. And I know people are like, oh, he said that him and Patrick Wah are going to talk about moves to the roster. Yeah, because he's the coach. Like he talked about to Lane Lambert about
Right.
that too. It's just, or Barry Trotz. Like this doesn't mean that Patrick Wah is going to be the GM and the successor to Lou Lamoriello after he's now said like 4 different times, I love coaching. Like it's my favorite thing in the world. I've learned that like not to bite off more than I can chew. That's my main lesson that I learned from the first time when I quit and was basically run out of the league. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, not surprised at that at all. But it's really I'm a little, the only thing I'm a little disappointed about is if I didn't find out if Patrick Waugh is going to be spending the whole summer on Long Island, because I just would love to know what he gets up to around here.
Yeah, maybe we'll find. They should put a camera on him during, for the website to watch, because I would be fascinated to watch that too. I mean, I assume his family's going to move down here, right? I mean, he's got to do all that kind of stuff. But yeah. It's funny. I didn't read Brooks today, but just this first paragraph is really bizarre. I'll get back to Lou in a second, but he wrote, "If only you could merge the Islanders' structure, character, and experience with the Devils' skill and youth, you would have one unit capable of contending for the Stanley Cup instead of 2 teams that combined for 1 playoff victory this spring." What structure is that exactly? That's the problem with the Islanders. They don't play with any. They used to have a structure, now they don't. Character and experience, I'll give you. But then he goes on to say the experience that they're experienced with not actually winning anything, and they don't really deserve these contracts that Lou has given out. But that's a whole other story. Anyway, I'll keep reading it later. But it's not surprising. It shouldn't be at all. But I'm with you. Like Lou, he said what he always says, which is, if there's a change to be made, he'll make it. You're always looking to get better, which he's said 100 times, going back to 1987 with the Devils. And he said a lot of the same stuff last year. He talked about making hockey trades and like wanting to push play or something along those lines, but you play with more speed, something about like that kind of stuff, which made you think, okay, he and I, you and him and the fans are in agreement. Like they need to address these certain areas. But then that stuff really didn't happen. Like, yeah, they added Bo Horvat and Pierre Engvall last year, and both those guys have played well for parts. Obviously, Horvat was great this regular season. Playoffs were a little bit spotty. Engvall, I thought, played really well in the playoffs, but regular season was a little bit spotty for over the course of 82 games. But those guys fit to what the Islanders were already kind of doing. Like, they didn't add necessarily an element of speed, although, Engvall's a pretty good skater. But like, they didn't add that kind of playing. And I don't mean speed as in like foot speed. I mean like playing fast, getting the puck from one end to the other. Their breakouts are still terrible, right? We can acknowledge that. They still have trouble moving the puck from one end of the ice to the other. They can cycle when they get a chance, but sometimes they don't. And it goes on shift after shift after shift. Their neutral zone, I thought, was pretty terrible for the most of the regular season and into the playoffs as well. They just, they don't really force a lot of plays. Their, blue line defense is terrible. They are prone to getting hemmed in their own zone for shifts at a time. Maybe moving out a guy like Martin or something like that changes that. But like you said, this team needs significant changes. And Lou is talking about making significant changes, and that's fine. But then he's got to act upon this. And this is where I get to the thing I was talking about before. Everybody agrees that something's got to change, but nobody seems to want to let go of anybody that's here. And maybe that's normal, right? That's probably expected. Nobody wants to see Matt Martin leave and play for somebody else, or Cal Clutterbuck, or whoever. But ultimately, they can't keep doing this again. And we said at the end of the regular season, I can't deal with another regular season like this. They have to find consistency. They have to learn how to get the puck from their end of the ice to the other end of the ice and into the other team's net more consistently. Scoring wasn't necessarily a big problem, but the way they scored was almost like accidental rather than structural, which is, I think, what drives us all kind of crazy. So, I on one hand, would I have welcomed somebody new? Possibly. On the other hand, I'm obviously not surprised that Lou is going to be here. But my patience for this kind of stuff is a little bit lower than it was last year, is, I guess, how I put it. Because I want to see some changes. And it's not that and I'm not saying this in a sense that like, get these losers out of the room, which is what people in Toronto are saying right now about many Leafs players. I'm saying this team needs to change in order to get better and get out of the first round. And that was another thing Barzell said, was like, expectations are high here. Standards are high. And he's right. They are. So, losing in 5 games in the first round can't be the standard. And so these guys have to fix it. And that's going to mean making some kind of change. And it's not going to be, somebody's not going to like it, but it's got to be done. And so Lou said this same stuff last year. Didn't really have huge changes. Mike Riley doesn't count. Bortuzzo trade doesn't count because Scott Mayfield was hurt. Oh, by the way, he was playing with a fractured ankle the entire time, and it just never got better. And so I guess our apologies to Scott Mayfield for whatever we said with the course of the regular season before he got hurt, because that kind of sucks. But I do want to see some changes. And again, I'm not saying that because I hate these guys and we want them to be launched into the sun. I just want this team to move on and find a new identity and stick with it and find something that works consistently so they can win.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean something's going to have to change. Somebody's going to have to go, basically, and some new people are going to have to come in.
Yeah. And there's obviously a huge difference between what we're hoping for and thinking is coming in the offseason that compared to the weird obsession with the Islanders especially from outsiders, that they need to just strip it down.
Oh yeah, no, we're not going to get into that.
So yeah, that's not what it is. It just means that maybe they don't bring back Matt Martin, and maybe they decide Hudson Fasching is a great fun story for a couple years. He's not going to be our answer for the second line wing position, and we got to find a better spot for Casey Cizikas. And I don't even think we mentioned the Fasching thing. I thought that was so funny.
So you texted me this, and you were like, Hudson Fasching wants a more defined role. Dude, you are the pinch hitter. That was his whole thing.
That's your role. It was just such a bizarre thing. And I don't honestly didn't listen to his, so I don't know what the context was. And I apologize if I'm taking it out of context. I just thought it was kind of funny. Like, yeah, dude, that's your NHL career, is to be the guy that can play on any line in any situation. Otherwise, you're not scoring 25 goals next to Matt Barzell, buddy. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's time to just and I don't even want to say it's like dead weight, because it's not.
Right.
These guys were all pretty key contributors to the Islanders and to a great time and era of the Islanders for a long time. It's just we got to open up some space to change the overall kind of look of this team, and that likely means that some really beloved players are going to be wearing different jerseys next year, and it's going to be weird and hard. And the last thing I want to see is Cal Clutterbuck storming down into the corner wearing a Nashville Predators jersey and smoking Matt Barzell or something, right? Like, that's not what you want to see,
right?
But it's just how it works, and that sucks, but it is. And I think it's also, so much of it is, it's not just about moving on from these players, but just also seeing what a different kind of player brings to the Islanders, right?
Right.
We haven't seen really, they've all fit a certain mold for so long.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about Matt Martin or Cal Clutterbuck and Josh Bailey, etc. Like, anytime that they've rotated guys in, and Kyle McLean, who I think has been an absolute revelation in a bottom six role and needs to come back. But even him, like, he kind of fits that mold, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
A guy who's going to work his tail off in the corner, hound on the puck, and won't really get you into too much trouble. Will have his moments of brilliance in and around the net. And Fasching kind of fit that. And even Julien Gauthier in a way, like, this is he had speed or whatever, but he was just a big presence that skated up and down the ice. And there was no, we still haven't seen a player who, I'm going to say, a PA Parento type player, because he's the first one that pops to my mind, like a East-West kind of guy, like a poor man's Matt Barzell. It's all been in similar similar players, and even on D, I feel like it's been the same way too.
Oh yeah,
Mike Riley, it's been Nick Leddy, and then it goes to Mike Riley. They even wear the same number, and they're best friends. And Bortuzzo comes in from Mayfield, and it's like this guy played for the Blues, that guy's from St. Louis. They play the same style. It's we haven't really seen the team kind of embrace the wild card kind of players in a while. So
Right.
whether or not they do it this off, that's something I want to see, because it's just different. Like waking up and not knowing what you're gonna what to expect out of a player, rather than knowing, yep, I know Cal Clutterbuck what he's gonna give me. I know what Matt Martin's gonna give me when they're on the ice. I know what this player is gonna give me. So that's part of what I think is important here, and in the process of moving on from the core of the 2010s into the 2020s.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example. Brooks mentions that, the guy that really needs, that Lamoriello should trade, although he's been an exemplary Islander for 11 seasons, is Brock Nelson, because it would allow Barzal and Horvat to take their natural spots at center, and obviously clear up, whatever, $6 million on the cap, and move some stuff around. And that all may very well be true, but I don't want to see Brock Nelson traded. But if that is the answer, and they end up, using that space and that way to get better, it's just going to have to be that way, I guess, because it doesn't seem like anybody's going to take Pajot. I think Larry may have forgotten about Palmieri, who's also kind of in a similar situation to Nelson. But again, it's going to suck, but something has to give. And as far as like rebuilds go, no, thank you very much. I'll save that for another episode where we could rant about that. But my answer to that is no. One other thing real quick, and then a quick announcement, and then we'll get to the second half. Shout out Semyon Varlamov. What a head of hair this guy has. I'm so jealous. I don't know how he fits it under that helmet. He stood out. Everybody else has all got hats on. At one point, Cizikas, Nelson, Martin, and Clutterbuck were all in a cluster, and every one of them was wearing a different hat. And it looked like an ad for Isles Lab. And shout out to the person who wrote me, replied to my tweet saying, yeah, each of those hats is $1,100 from Isles Lab, because it would definitely be that way. But Varley, that's cool. That's some head of hair he's got there. It's really fun. Actually, I'm looking at the page right now, and it's Adam Pelech on top and Varlamov on the bottom. It's like before and after. Varley almost like he's got a raccoon skin cap on his head, like Davy Crockett style. So I had to point that out. I couldn't stop staring at it, to be honest with you. It was very impressive. Okay, real quick before we get off into our second half, which is going to be focused solely on Master Leaf Theater. So if you're not interested, I totally get it, but trust me, you're going to want to stick around because it's going to be fun. Real quick announcement, just going forward. So we're going to do the thing that we normally do when the Islanders are eliminated, and that is alternate Anxieties and Weird Islanders until free agency day, which is July 2nd, which is going to be our season finale. This week, you get both. We have this episode right now, and then we have a Weird Islanders coming out on Friday. It's a great episode. It's Mike free, unfortunately, because he was very under the weather that day. But it's about a player that I really, really wanted to do right back from the very beginning when we thought of the show. And it's with a great guest who illuminates so much on a topic we never really talk about that much. So I can't wait for people to get a hold of it. That comes out on Friday. And then next week will be Anxiety, not recorded on Sunday because it's Mother's Day. So we're going to record that on Monday. And then the week later is Anxiety. A week after that, on the 24th, is Weird Islanders again, then Anxiety, Weird Islanders, Anxiety, again until July 2nd. If something breaks, somebody's traded, somebody's fired, hired, whatever, we can pop in and do an episode, but that's usually how it's going to work. Now, if you're a patron over the Patreon, you'll also get our mailbag episode on the 16th, tentatively scheduled for that. You'll also get our Country Club Atmosphere at some point just before the end of the month. You'll get the book club as well. So if you want to sign up again, Islanders Anxiety, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. You get stuff all summer long, basically. But if you are on the main feed, we're going to alternate Anxiety, Weird Islanders, Anxiety, Weird Islanders until July 2nd. And then that'll be our season finale after the draft, after the free agency and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Thank you very much. And now we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to do a glorious Master Leaf Theater celebrating the playoff elimination of the Toronto Maple Leafs once again. So please meet us on the other side. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, mugs, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey also carries our Al Arbor and the Island merch, and our portion of the sales always go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. Use the code ANXIETY20 to save 20% off an order of 2 items. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a 2022 Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This podcast is sponsored by Ramp. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/easy. Ramp.com/easy. RAMP.com/easy.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
So once again, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been eliminated, this time by the Boston Bruins in 7 games. Thank you, David Pastrnak, in that wild overtime goal off the backboards from Hampus Lindholm. That was a classic. And so it is with great pleasure that we bring to you a very vast and a very varied edition of Master Leaf Theater. So this is going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to jump around a little bit. We've got some stories. We've got some tweets.
There's just too much good stuff to focus on one person.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yeah, all day. It's been fun kind of going through it. There's a lot of tweets out there that are very funny, and again, some stories. So, and it's a good cross section of writers, younger people, kind of older people, established, newspaper guys, and then sort of like online only entities. So we're going to start with a classic, a favorite of ours here. We're going to, by the way, give Luke Fox Jukebox the night off because these are not going to.
Yeah, very underwhelming.
Yeah. I was
might be saving his fastball for the clean out day.
Yeah, that might. Yeah, so maybe Monday night or Tuesday morning we'll get some jukebox stuff. But that's okay because we got plenty of other candidates here. So we're going to start with a favorite of yours in particular, the one and only Chris Johnston over at The Athletic. So what is? So he wrote this long thing. I read it. You had sent it around, and as always with CJ, he really goes for the heart here and finds these little sort of stories that really paint a picture. So what are we looking at here from CJ?
Yeah, yes. So CJ, he's been on one today. And talk about a perfect fit. Him and The Athletic, which is good for a number of reasons. One, because finally they have some Leafs coverage there, and two, his writing style is just it was made for it. Like
right.
If The Athletic was to make an AI writer, it would be CJ, and it might be because if you look at his profile picture, it's very much looks like it. But so CJ at The Athletic gets it to really let his hair down, so to speak. Where I don't think he probably could do it as much with TSN. And was he at Sportsnet before that? Sportsnet before that?
Maybe, yeah.
So he gets to let his hair down a little bit more and pretend to be, or to act like one of the cool kids at the Athletic cafeteria, the mess hall. So this is a article about how it's time to move on from the Shanna plan. I'm going to start in the beginning. I'm not going to start in the beginning of it because it's kind of just all background that everyone knows about how this kind of plan came to be and why and all that. So I'm going to pick it up in the middle, and it's brilliant stuff from our friend CJ. I want to start with the quote, the money quote from right before, because it's an absolute brilliant quote from Sheldon Keefe. Quote, "It's very evident that when teams play the Leafs, they set up the game for the Leafs to beat themselves," said head coach Sheldon Keefe. "No matter how close it ends up looking in the end, they always do. This remains a group that hasn't been anywhere near a lengthy playoff run. A team requires 16 wins in one playoff spring to lift the Stanley Cup, and you need to combine the past 5 Leafs postseasons to count up that many victories. They were a young group when they lost to Washington in 2017 and then dropped consecutive 7-game series to Boston the following 2 springs. After Game 7 in 2019, then coach Mike Babcock said, 'I think we're really taking steps and going in the right direction, but we've got to push through and get through this.' 5 years on, they still haven't found their way. It was a familiar, solemn walk to the bus Saturday night for the veterans on the 3rd floor at TD Garden. Some munched on pizza after another energy-sapping, soul-crushing loss. They wore blank stares while no doubt replaying the vision of David Pastrnak freezing the clock in overtime on a Bruins set play that caught their defenders off guard. I mean, this is as tight a group as I've been a part of here," said Austin Matthews. And I feel like we say that every year, but I mean it. It truly is an incredible group. It's incredibly tight. Look, I don't think there's an issue with the core, Ed and William Nylander, who scored the final 3 Toronto goals of the season. I think we were effing right there all series. We battled hard and got to Game 7 and overtime. It's a shitty feeling. All these years on, and with so little collective playoff success, these Leafs are carrying deep scars and a considerable amount of baggage and self-doubt."
Incredible.
Man,
Incredible.
it's just beautiful stuff.
This goes right to something that you said. I believe it was last year. Maybe it was the year before. Who can remember with these Leafs playoff flameouts? But you said something that has, this season in particular, these things that I've read after this season has resonated with me with. And that is that for these guys, getting out of the first round is the only thing. Like, they are not thinking about, when they say we were so close this year, I don't think they're saying we were close to winning a Stanley Cup. They're saying we were close to getting out of the first round, which is like, yeah, technically you were in overtime in Game 7, but like, that's not the end goal here, guys. Like, that's kind of part 1 of this whole, journey you're supposed to go on to win the Stanley Cup. I don't know how many Leafs get that. Like, that's the sense I'm getting. Am I crazy? Because
No.
I mean, again, that's the thing you said. I now it sounds like I'm fully on board. That's the thing for these guys.
There's 2 things that I've realized about this team, the way it's covered, that really opens doors when you start to read stories like this, listen to them, watch their games, and listen to the radio shows like Kipper and Bourne and all that stuff, the podcasts that we listen to after they lose, all that stuff. It also, you have like an aha moment when I think you think about the Leafs in these 2 ways. One is the one you just mentioned, that these guys view the winning a first round playoff series with a team that is perennially one of the Stanley Cup favorites is like right. The ultimate goal. And then part 2 of that is that the guys that cover the team, and in defense of some of these players, the coverage is crazy, as that's the whole part, of the show, or this kind of subset of Islanders anxiety. That these guys who cover this team 24/7, 365 on July 1st, 2018, got it in their heads that the Maple Leafs with John Tavares as their soon-to-be captain were almost guaranteed a Stanley Cup, and there's no way that this would just go off the rails. The probability was so low that this wouldn't work out. That they all started covering the team as if it was preordained or had already happened, and they cover the team as if it has already happened. So like their coverage right now is a little different, but up until they lost Game 7, and really up until they lost Game 4 to go down 3-1, like this team was covered in a way that you would have read it if you were in a coma or were on the moon and came back down to earth. You'd be like, oh, I'm reading this article by Luke Fox Jukebox. He's talking about the Leafs. They're down 2-1 in this best of 7 series, but it's not that big a deal because they win all the time. And they've won several Stanley Cups, I guess, in these recent years, because why else would this guy be writing in this tone, and all his friends writing in this tone? That has now stopped, which is funny. But and I think when you think about the Leafs in these kind of two ways, and Leafs coverage in these ways, it really kind of shows you the absurdity of it all. And it's an expertise that I am not proud to have, but I am, it is part of who I am now, is just like reading all this Leaf stuff and knowing the tendencies and the different writing styles of different Leafs writers and the quotes. I can tell you who said a Leafs quote just by reading it. If you covered up the names, this is not stuff I'm proud of, but it just is what I am. So to have that all come crashing down onto these people right now is just incredible to watch, that they are in real time having the realization, like you said, that this team got past the first round once, and they talk about it as if, like, if they had just won Game 7 against the Bruins, they would have, this would have been a generational team. When the Islanders have been past round 1 3 times since John Tavares left, the Vancouver Canucks just got past round 1 with Artur Silovs in goal. Like, it's not a monumental thing. When the I'm sure when the Colorado Avalanche beat the Winnipeg Jets, like, there was no, wow, what a story. They got past round 1 of the playoffs. What a huge hump. So yeah, and but there's so much there's so many great quotes in this thing, and the Keefe one is one I'm going to take with me forever.
That is a dead man walking right there. That's when I saw that. I saw the video before I read that thing. That is a dead man walking. He knows his job is done. He's gone.
Have you ever heard of a coach refer to his team in like the third team like that, a third person like that?
Not in that context, no.
Like it honestly reminded me about Kyle Dubas's like his first press conference with the Penguins when he referred to the Leafs, and he's like, yeah, what they're doing over there is fine. It was almost as if Sheldon Keefe was talking about the Leafs, knowing I'm the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, that's how you got to beat. How do you beat the Leafs, Sheldon? Oh, you just got to make the Leafs beat themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, going from that down to the 2 players that they interviewed, which are Auston Matthews, and talk about, to kind of juxtapose Auston Matthews and Matthew Barzal. His breakout day thing was, as we said, like raw, kind of uncliched. His tongue was just like he was very uncomfortable because he was upset and raw. Yeah. And this one is Auston Matthews just talking about how tight the group is, and William Nylander talking about how he doesn't want the core to be broken up for the 6th straight year, 7th straight year, whatever it is. It's just it's outrageous. Yeah. And finally, these guys, the CJs and Luke Fox jukeboxes of the world, are picking that up and being like, you can't say it again. You said it 6 times already, and we let you get away with it 4 or 5 times, but we're not letting you do it again. So it's
that's fantastic. My favorite thing about the Leafs post-game quotes is that Mitch Marner and Morgan Riley, the 2 guys that were on the ice for Pasternak's goal, weren't there to give any quotes. They beat their feet. They were just gone. And I know this is like an old hockey man thing, but bro, you got to stand there and take it. Like, I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to have that conversation with people if I was Mitch Marner or Morgan Riley, but you got to do it. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. You just got to do it. Yeah. Like, that's. Yeah.
And people are like, oh, Connor Hellebuck didn't meet with the media after they got eliminated. Like, yeah, Connor Hellebuck was just like a Vezina winner and got hung out to dry by his team. Mitch Marner just no-showed his way through a playoff series, is now being run out of town despite being a 100-point player in the regular season. I've seen so many vines, or whatever you'd call a short video of Mitch Marner doing the gritty on my For You page today. It's like, oh, here's Mitch Marner's playoff highlights, and it's just like him, like funny. And the fact that there's 9 or 10 different videos of this guy doing the gritty is just kind of tells you how cringy he is. And when I say that, I mean, like, yeah, come to the Islanders, Mitch. We'd love to have you, gritty all you want, but it's amazing that they didn't meet with the media. I couldn't be happy when I read that. I was like, because I was waiting to hear Mitch Marner say like, "Oh, we don't care." His go-to is, "We don't care what you guys say. We block out all that noise." Like, no, you don't, buddy. Like, we have 8 years of evidence that you guys absolutely care way too much about the pressure of playing in this market.
It's funny.
But it was great that I was so happy that those two guys kind of wimped out from meeting meeting the media head on.
I saw a comment on the Luke Fox Jukebox's story today where some Leafs fan was mad that Ryan Reeves wore a Hakuna Matata t-shirt to the game, and Austin Matthews wore a Star Wars t-shirt. I forget what it said, and I felt like saying, like, does this guy know that May the 4th is sort of like the unofficial Star Wars day? May the 4th, maybe he didn't, but I mean, wearing a Star Wars t-shirt is one of the coolest things I've ever seen Austin Matthews do. Speaking of Austin Matthews, we got our second story here. This is kind of like an O. Henry thing we're doing here. We got all these different little short stories from people going on this episode of Master Leaf Theater. And this is from an online guy named Jeff Violette. Now, you may know this guy as he used to go by the handle of Jeffler. I've had him muted for years because his takes are exhausting and I have no idea what he's arguing about half the time. And of course, it's always about the Leafs and I don't care. But this popped up in my feed and from somebody, and I thought it was the funniest thing I had said and seen a long time. So it's a series of tweets, and it starts with Jeff saying that Austin Matthews having gotten a nomination for the Selke Trophy is a big deal. And so it starts with him saying Toronto is in funeral mode right now, so this won't get the love it would on a different day. But winning the Rocket by a dozen goals and landing as a Selke finalist is a hell of a year for Austin Matthews. And he's right. That's true. That's a great year. Austin Matthews had a great year. I mean, this is not shocking, right? But somebody replies to him and says, who cares about regular season success? This is the issue. And this is where this Master Leaf Theater tweet comes in, because this is just fantastic. And this goes to show you the inner workings of the mind of the way too online Maple Leafs fan. And so Jeff Violette writes, and the person replied to this person or retweeted this person. He writes, I can't get behind this mindset personally. Everybody wants to win championships, but like 95% of the games around the league are played during the season. Dismissing what happens there entirely feels like self-imposed misery, but your own mileage may vary. Basically what he's saying is championships don't matter because more games are played during the regular season, which is absolute bollocks. But then he follows that up with another tweet saying that I'd also say, specific to Toronto this year, they weren't close to favorites to winning the cup or even the favorites to win the series. The whole, quote, regular season doesn't count, they blew it in the spring mindset makes more sense in, say, 2021 than it does this year. What? What are you talking about? I'm sorry. Were the Leafs not one of the favorites to win the cup this year? Am I crazy? Like,
they were up there.
They had to have been in the top 5, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no, they were up there.
Okay, so
and this was also the year
bollocks.
they were supposed to win the Atlantic Division. Remember, everybody before the season was like, "Oh, they're going to win the Atlantic. The Bruins are going to take a step back, and the Panthers are hurt." So,
right, yeah. So that's nonsense, and B, so now the regular season doesn't count. They blew it in the spring. Thing is only good for certain years and not every year, even though this team is the most covered, the most expensive, the most poised to win the cup every year. Now this doesn't count for, like, again, this is a mindset that is way too online. This team was built and analyzed to death to make them a Stanley Cup contender, and they cannot get out of the first round in 6 out of 7 years. That is a monumental failure. I don't care how good the regular seasons are. It gets back to what you were just saying too. They write about this team as if they've already accomplished something, and they really haven't. And that is a huge problem for the amount of attention they get, the amount of money that is spent on these guys, the amount of the massiveness of this machine. To not have accomplished a Stanley Cup is a monumental failure. Like, I'm sorry. There's no way you can't tweet your way around this. Sorry, Jeffler. You can't.
I this is a thing, like we brought up so many times with the Leafs and how they're covered, and it's not just by like their fan base too. It's like seeped into
right,
the kind of mainstream. Is that this is like one of the most disappointing rosters eras in, at least in the salary cap era, probably in NHL history. This is a team that has the best goal scorer in the league. They have 200-point players on the wing. They've got the biggest free agent acquisition maybe ever, like the most high-profile one ever. They're, like you said, they're in the biggest market in the league. They are in the center of the sports universe, and they've won one playoff series, one. And then right after they won that, everyone's like, if you remember last year when they beat the Lightning, the narrative was that once they get that monkey off their back, they're just going to be a word that will come up later, unleashed. and just make mincemeat out of the rest of the competition, and they did the exact opposite of it. They fell on their face to the point where, if I was a Leafs fan, and I feel this way about some Islander playoff wins now because of the guy who scored the winning goals, is like they're complicated now. So like watching the Leafs eliminate the Lightning, the highlight videos, I don't think I would do that because I know what's coming next, and I feel that way about the Islanders in 2016. Like it sucks, but that joy kind of was stolen from me in a way, and luckily it was replaced by some other memories that somehow Travis Zajac ends up on the roster. But like it's fine. That's how sports work in some ways. That not everything goes according to the plan that you have set out in your head. That these guys, like, they somehow give this team a pass and these players a pass where, oh, well, Austin Matthews scored 69 goals. It's not on him. Sure, whatever, you could say that, but he's a part of a team that has completely underwhelmed in the most important part of the season. And now the angle to kind of come to grips with it is that, regular season success is more fun than I love that the Leafs also tweeted out like a big congratulations to Austin Matthews for being nominated. Like, man, just text him, be like, the PR guy can text him and say, hey, Austin, we're not going to send out a congratulatory tweet today about the Selke because, obvious, so
this is right up there, by the way, with Jeff's good friend Dom Lucian from The Athletic, who does all this model work and has all these projections and all these predictions for every game all year long, and that don't factor in goalies. Like, what are we talking about? Like, teams have goalies, and if you can't include them in the model, maybe the model's incomplete. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, we can't just remove one aspect of this because it makes your team look bad. It doesn't really work.
Right.
Like,
it's perfect. It's like it's the most convenient blind spots in you can imagine. And what I find funny here too is this is kind of a contrarian angle from Jeff. Is, do you remember going into the season, everybody said the same thing? Regular season doesn't matter. We're gonna be it's gonna be the most apathetic fan base of all time. And then they all got wrapped up in the Austin Matthews thing and completely blew that to shreds. Like it, which is great because it ends up costing them dearly that they went after it was almost too on the nose that this team was chasing William Nylander going for a 100-point season in meaningless games and Matthews going after goal 70 in meaningless games. And it ends up costing them both because we've heard a lot of people being like, oh my God, what are the chances that these guys get hurt? That, in this best of 5 or best of 7 series, they missed 2 combined games all season. And now they're both out. Like, yeah, man, that's called, looking the hockey gods in the eyes and being like, no, we'll take it from here. Like, that's tempting fate, brother. Like, of course that stuff is going to happen to a team that already has your kind of cursed baggage. Wouldn't have done that. But, so to say that the regular season is all that matters is just beautiful way to look at it. And I'm thrilled with the way everybody's been kind of playing their role here. Last year, going after they got eliminated by the Panthers, there was a lot of debate about blowing up the core, but it didn't feel like. But it was also it was the same debate that they had every year, right? Like they've all said they alternate, like, oh, we got to run it back, and no, there's no way that this team comes back as is, like, and everyone's just wrong. And I'm sure that this season
they're having
the
it
same
now.
Thing.
Yeah, they're doing it right now.
Exactly. And but it's bad when Jonas Siegel is saying that they need to move on. And I like that Jonas has gone from he liked Brendan Shanahan up until last May. Because Brendan Shanahan was the guy that hired Kyle Dubas. He had the foresight to know this guy's an up and coming bright mind of the game, and he hired Kyle Dubas. And then when he fired Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan is like enemy number one for Jonas
He became
Siegel.
an
And
idiot
I have
all of a sudden, yeah.
I have this like great bit of audio from Jonas that I can't wait to unleash, and about like how the Leafs shouldn't rename a street after John Tavares, but I gotta wait for the right moment to really,
Jesus.
it's
I can't wait.
It's so good. But I would like to just to read a little bit from Jonas as well. It's a very short little bit, but it adds to this conversation about how what these Leafs are now saying, because it's almost as if the Leafs players are regurgitating what the writers used to say every offseason, right? Like the Jonas and Luke Fox and CJ and Jeff, all these guys would be like, no, they don't trade any of these guys. Don't trade William Nylander. Don't trade Mitch Marner. That would be stupid. You're going to get pennies on the dollar. It's not going to work. And, you know, we got to bet on talent. The Leafs they're going to crack. They're going to break through at one time. And now it's kind of, you know, that is now starting to quiet down a bit, but now it's the Leafs who are the actual Leafs who are saying it. So to start with Jonas, this is also this article is titled "The Maple Leafs Ran It Back Again. It Backfired Again. What Now?" And this is great because this is Jonas, who was one of the people pushing for them to rebuild, to run it back every year, because that's what Kyle Dubas did. And as long as Kyle was doing it, running it back was the right decision. But now that Brad Treliving did it, it was a disaster. So he writes, "The call came last summer. It was from the new general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brad Treliving, and he had a message for Mitch Marner. He made it pretty clear that he wanted to keep our core together," Marner told The Athletic last fall. "He trusted our core. What now for the Leafs and the core after yet another early playoff exit? It's an empty feeling right now," William Nylander said, in what's become an all too familiar setting for the Leafs. An empty dressing room after a painful playoff loss. Nylander's stick, emblazoned with, quote, Willie Styles, was still standing against the wall in the corner. It wasn't long after Game 7 and another first-round exit, the mood was dour. "Look, I don't think there's an issue with the core," Nylander said. "I think we're fucking right there. All series battling hard. We got it to Game 7 OT. It's a shitty feeling. Austin Matthews called this particular team the tightest he's ever been a part of. I feel like we say that every year, but it truly is an incredible group, incredibly tight," he said. "We're right there," John Tavares said. "It's a very small difference." Like, they are now the ones, that is John Tavares cosplaying as Luke Fox Jukebox, Austin Matthews as Don Luszczyszyn, and William Nylander as Chris Johnston. It's insane that they're like the ones now begging for them to be like, no, guys, trust us. This time it'll be different. When all along it was the other guys on the other side of the microphone that were like, no, trust us, stay together, don't fight on the bench. Nobody's bringing up that fight on the bench anymore, by the way, which is great.
No. Again, it's much like we talked about with the Islanders. I could see that they don't want to lose anybody in that locker room because I bet they are tight, but which makes me wonder how loose and how untight so many other teams were, if being tight is such a big deal, because we keep hearing about it for certain teams, including our own. But, you know, I mean, for the sake of, you know, to be honest, like, they need to change something. And I don't even know, you know, we talk about the Islanders having a little wiggle room. The Leafs have even less because they got a couple of extensions kicking in. Marner is doing a new contract. You know, we don't know what's going to happen there. So it is funny that they, you know, have these talking points and they're saying this stuff, but yeah, this is basically the stuff that the Athletic guys have been writing about for years. And the other thing too, that is something that you've brought up as well. How much did they actually run back exactly? Right. Because a lot of these guys I think are kind of new. That Reeves we talked about before, Tyler Bertuzzi is new, Max Domi is new. All three of those guys may be gone. But like Matthew Nyes this was his first full year. Did they really run it back? We talked about this before the season. No, they didn't run anything back. Still, you know, most of the guys are still here. Most of these guys are new, I should say.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like if think about last year, they traded for like 8 guys at the trade deadline, and all those guys are gone. And now it's it's run it back just means Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander, and Riley. And really, honestly, it just means at this point, are you going to keep John Tavares and Mitch Marner? Because there's no way you could trade the other guys. Like Riley's got 7 years left at like $7.5 million and a no movement clause. Whereas like Marner and Tavares, they have no movement clauses. It's also funny, like giving these guys no movement clauses is not a bad idea, but when Lou Lamoriello does it, it's it's a war crime. But so it's that's really the question. And I feel it's so funny how Tavares gets his criticism, and I don't know if you picked up on this in all the reading we've done today. The writers will be, they'll say like, "Oh yeah, he disappointed," but, and then they always give like a qualification to it, like, "Oh, but he did score a big goal."
Yeah,
the one goal that Tavares scored did come in a win. Oh, he did drive the net on Matthew Nyes' game-winning goal in overtime. Like, that's us saying, yeah, Brock Nelson had a rough. He wasn't great in the Hurricane series, but he did score that empty net goal that like Palmieri set up and whatever. Like it's but for Tavares, he really kind of he really does escape the type of criticism that Marner gets is it's almost personal now. Like, these guys really do not like Mitch Marner. These guys being Maple Leafs fans, but Tavares is, they handle with kids' gloves because they don't want to admit that this has just not worked out. But the biggest day of their life in their biggest off-season day ever turned out to be a little bit of a nightmare here, as John Tavares still has as many wins in the playoffs as an Islander, series wins as an Islander, as he does a Maple Leaf, which is just so beautiful and something that we. Hopefully, that continues. Hopefully his time at the Maple Leafs, maybe it's done this summer. If it's done next year, whatever, hopefully that does continue. But we won't know for sure. But we deserve that. We deserve moments like these for what we had to go through. Not just on July 1st, but leading up to it.
Sure. There is something about how he's treated. I think I do disagree. I think a lot of Leafs fans would like to get rid of Tavares, actually, or at least see him.
Well, I think the fans, like the normal fans, it's the the fans who have jobs covering the team they handle him with kid gloves.
Oh, that's true. 100%. Yeah. And because he's their friend, that the same people that get very mad when he gets booed by Islanders fans. And I was thinking about that too, because I wanted to tweet something, but I didn't know how to really word it. But I was going to say, like, if you think Islanders fans booing John Tavares, twice a year at, when they play at UBS Arena is bad, buddy, you got to see my timeline right now. Like, my Twitter timeline was just Islanders fans dunking on Tavares. Like, this will never go away. And that brings us to our final installment here of our final story in this installment of Master Leaf Theater. And it is a tweet. It is not a tweet from this playoff year. It's not even a tweet from this season. It's actually quite an old tweet. But it is relevant, and it becomes relevant at certain points of the year, including this one right here, and including every time the Islanders play the Leafs. And I was thinking about we've christened Luke Fox Jukebox the Jane Austen of Master Leaf Theater. And if he is the Jane Austen of Master Leaf Theater, then this is a story that is ancient and is still influential and still, trying to be understood by scholars even to this day, which would make this tweet the Beowulf of Master Leaf Theater. And I'm so excited to finally read this. I think it's the perfect time. But like works like Beowulf, there's a lot of stuff under the surface that most people don't read. Like, we all read this in like college or something. There's more to it than that. So there's actually 2 tweets here that I want to read that are kind of the full story. So this is a pretty important thing. And the tweet is from NHL.com senior editor John Matisse. And I think many of you know where I'm going with this. It is a legendary tweet. It is one many of you have retweeted, and it deserves the Master Leaf Theater treatment. So the original tweet is read as such. It is an absolute shame John Tavares was toiling away on Long Island for so many years. He's finally unleashed, and it's quite something. Now, that was tweeted on December 23rd, 2018. And obviously, that was quite a long time ago. But there's more to it. This is the thing. A lot of people don't realize that there was a sequel to this tweet where John followed his own tweet because he obviously was getting dunked on immediately. And so the follow-up tweet deserves a little bit of recognition, too. This was also on the 23rd. He wrote, "Hey guys, this tweet did not come out as I originally intended. I was trying to highlight how well JT is doing in Toronto with such strong support. It was poorly worded and wasn't supposed to be a shot at the Isles or their fans. I take full responsibility. Sorry." Well, John, I'm glad you're sorry. And I know that you're probably even more sorry every time the Leafs are eliminated from the playoffs, so they play the Islanders and lose, because this tweet gets retweeted over and over and over again. And you're probably like, Jesus Christ, enough, leave me alone with this already. But this is an absolute classic. I mean, there's no way around this. Again, this is the Beowulf. This is right at the very beginning. You know, this is where it all starts from. Every superhero story leads back to this. This one, and I got to say though, in all seriousness, I got to give credit to John Matisse for not deleting this tweet. Like, he could have deleted the original tweet and saved himself a lot of grief, but it's still there.
Yep.
It's still up there, still getting retweeted. So props to him, but this is never not going to be funny. And if this is where it ends for Tavares, or next year is similar, I mean, this is going to go down as one of the greatest tweets in history for sure. Islanders history, definitely.
Yeah, there are obviously some classics of this genre, and the spin-off genres, of course, and they all, like you said, they all kind of have the same tone and melodramatic. Right. This is so much more important than it really is. Feel to it, right. And this was the first of them, and it's you can almost unravel like a piece of yarn starting there, and you will find yourself at the Jonas Siegel writing about Maple Leafs front office employees saying that they're in mourning when Kyle Dubas got fired last season for lying to everybody on camera and trying to publicly negotiate with his boss at a press conference watched by millions of people. And then you can keep unspooling that yarn, and you get to some of these great Luke Fox jukebox joints, and you get to Jesse Marshall talking about Riley Smith and the Kyle Dubas Renaissance painting to Josh Yohe, and now we're full circle. Every year we go full circle back to this wonderful tweet from John Matisse. And I was watching Leafs Talk, and there was something that JD Bunkus, JT Bourne, and Sam from the Kipper and Bourne show were talking about. And by the way, Justin Bourne's son is a Leafs fan. He said that he cried about the game. It was his first sports tears, and I was a little disappointed about that. But Justin, your dad won 4 Stanley Cups with the Islanders, and your father-in-law also won 4 Stanley Cups with the Islanders. Yeah. Maybe he should be an Islander fan, but whatever. I'm not going to get too deep into that. And they were talking about how, to what we were saying before, these guys treat like winning a one singular playoff round as this massive accomplishment. They were talking about moments, and that they were like, look, we weren't going to win the Stanley Cup. We kind of all knew that in the back of our heads, but we were thinking, wow, erasing a 3-1 series deficit from the Boston Bruins and exercising some more demons that way, at least it would have been a moment. And that would have been great, because this fan base is devoid of moments. And when they were talking about that, I was thinking, you know what's great for us, for the Schadenfreude folks? We get a moment every year. And there's, to me, maybe one of my favorite moments of the NHL season every year, because I know the Islanders aren't going to win the Stanley Cup ever, is seeing the first person to find and retweet the John Tavares has been unleashed tweet the night the Leafs get eliminated. It's an unbridled joy, because it's so personal and so internal. Emily and I watched the game last night together. It was great. When I was so down about the whole game, I was like, they're not going to win. And I finally got her on board after the Leafs scored. I was like, she's like, oh man, I guess you're right. This sucks. And I was like, yeah, it sucks. But and then after the Bruins won, like, she went to bed, and she actually said, she's like, well, are you going to go downstairs and just watch Maple Leafs videos? And I said, yes, but first I'm going to eat a donut that I bought at 8 a.m. that morning. Nice. And I said to myself, I'm not eating this donut unless the Maple Leafs lose. And so I got to eat that donut and watch some Leaf stuff. And she went to bed because she's a normal person. Like, there was nothing else that night. But for me, I saw this tweet start coming around again. And like I said, it's just such a personal, unique hard to explain joy to people who aren't in this muck with us, who aren't in these trenches and foxholes with other Islander fans. Like, seeing that tweet is like if you'd see like a flare go up to signal a ceasefire or something in World War I. You're like, oh, thank God! Like I can go back to the to camp for until October, and this all starts again. Like that.
Right.
It's such a it is a moment. Like, yes, you guys didn't get the moment, but we did, and you did. We deserved it more than you, and I have no issue saying that. Like, yeah, you guys have been through all this heartbreak, and being a Leafs fan must suck because you get gut punched year in and year out. But if you're that team, if you're the team that goes through this kind of misery over and over and over again, and still nobody roots for you, as we've talked about before, there was an article written by someone like, maybe we're the bad guys. Because if you have this kind of heartbreak over and over and over again, eventually people are going to start rooting for you. People were rooting for the Washington Capitals, who everyone hated for a while, and kind of got joy out of them losing in the playoffs, and then they won, and everyone's like, that was great. Like, at least Ovi got his cup. I have no problem with that. Like, if nobody pulls for the Leafs outside of the Leafs fans. So that needs to make you look in the mirror and be like, why is nobody else rooting for this team that has not won anything since 1967?
Yeah. I know a few people that are rooting for the Leafs because they play like a fun brand of hockey. I mean, nobody was rooting for the Islanders when they were doing their thing. That's for sure. But yeah, no, there was a writer at Pension Plan Puppets who was like, we're the bad guys. And that was the only time that I ever saw anybody acknowledge, like, yeah, we signed a guy away from a team that, he said he wanted to stay with, and, really put all their eggs into this basket and expected him to stay. And everybody thought he was going to stay. And then he left for us. Like, that makes us the bad guy. And like, we're not the we're not the good guys here, but yeah, it is funny that, they're, I feel like they might be losing fans now. Like, I think people have gotten over the hump where, like, I can't take it with these. I still see people though, like, oh, I have so much sympathy for them. I feel so bad for them. I don't. They've treated Islanders fans like shit since this team came into the league. Like, I have no sympathy for these people. Like, I just, I'm not gonna. I have friends that are Leafs fans, but I'm not gonna say anything to them. Like, they didn't say anything to me when my team lost, in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's the end of that. Real quick, we're almost done here, and we thank you so much for sticking with us. I know this is a long one. This bit isn't for everybody, but obviously we got to talk about it. And this is the one time a year when you can say, how does this affect the Leafs? And it actually makes a lot of sense. We forgot a tweet that I'm going to read us here, and we can just laugh about it. This comes from another account that I'm pretty sure I have muted, called Big Head Hockey, which, I don't know, these stats, guys. These have cartoon heads. I don't know what the appeal is. I don't get it. I don't need to see a big, like, Nintendo Wii me of Carey Price to know it's Carey Price. I don't get this. And this tweet also should go down in history as just extreme excuse making. They write, goalies that Toronto has faced in the Matthews era: Braden Holtby, the year he finished second in the Vezina; Tuukka Rask, the year he finished seventh in the Vezina; Tuukka Rask again; Jonas Korpisalo, the year he led the playoffs in save percentage; Carey Price; Andrei Vasilevsky, the year he finished fifth in the Vezina; Andrei Vasilevsky, the year he finished sixth in the Vezina; Sergei Bobrovsky during his peak last season; Jeremy Swayman put up a .950 save percentage. 6 Vezina winners, 4 Jennings winners, 1 Hart winner, 1 Conn Smythe winner. Goalies love nothing more than waking up for a series against Toronto. Guys, it's a playoff game. You're going to play a good goalie. That's how it works. Like, that's just how you're going to see good goalies. And these are the guys in the Leafs' own division. And I'm sorry, finishing 7th in the Vezina for Tuukka. The Islanders beat Tuukka Rask. Like, they managed to do it. It wasn't easy, but they did it. My favorite is Jonas Korpisalo, the year he led the playoffs in save percentage. Who do you think he played to lead the league in save percentage? It was the Leafs. And Carey Price, no offense, he seems like a great guy. Carey Price, that was the last we were ever seeing Carey Price. He was it. He emptied his tank in that series against the Leafs.
And you were up 3-1.
Right. And you were up 3-1 against Carey Price. So the quote tweets of this are fantastic. I don't think this went the way they thought.
Yeah, because it's that's part of this kind of turning of the page, this coming of age in the cycle, is that that stuff that made its way the rounds all the time when they would get eliminated, and we would just laugh at it. Remember the last year was Wes McCauley. It was Wes McCauley has like a personal vendetta against Sheldon Keefe.
Right.
So like that was the big thing, and then the year before that was Vasilevsky or whatever it was, or it was a pick. There was a pick play involved, and but yeah, as our friend Art Staple once said, that one of the best things about when they lose is that it's all, everything else is besides the point, right? Like the point here is that they've lost in the first round for the seventh time in 8 years. John Tavares, since they've signed him, they've made it past the first round once since 2018 when they signed him. His former team, with a lot less talent and a lot less money, has done that a bunch of times. And nobody will just come out and say, this has been an absolute miserable experience for all of us. It's been an underwhelming, huge disappointment from the general manager to the coach to everybody involved. Like, this has been a flat out failure. It's been a failure. It's the definition of a failure. The Bruins were getting heat. Like, they had a lot of historical emotional baggage because they had blown a 3-1 lead the year before, and they hadn't been to the second round since Travis Zajac ran their show in 2021, which was 3 years ago. So like the Bruins were being called like playoff chokers because they hadn't been to the second round since 2021. And meanwhile, the Leafs are, the one since 2004. So it's just, it's amazing how much these people have twisted themselves into knots to just avoid saying that this has been a failure. It's been an absolute failure. We're talking about how it's going to be sad watching the Islanders kind of move on from pieces that have provided us with 2 deep runs into the playoffs. And that they didn't reach their ultimate goal, but the memories that they've provided us, we'll all as sports fans appreciate and kind of cherish. And that's because they didn't lose in the first round of the playoffs every year. They went on some runs. Like that's how these memories get built, and they have staying power. So it's so very impressive to watch this. And it's not done. We have locker room cleanout day on Tuesday. Chris Johnston has said that the everybody's radars have been notched up to volume 12 because the Leafs players and coach will meet with the media on Tuesday, then the management on Thursday. So who knows what to bring. And you won't believe this, Dan, but people are saying that this will be the biggest offseason in quite a while for the Leafs.
What?
Which we've never heard before.
Nope.
You can expect change. Never heard that one before. There's no way that this core is coming back intact, which we've never heard before. The coach might lose his job. Never heard that one before. Brendan Shanahan might lose his job. Never heard that one before.
Did you know that the Leafs have a new team president?
Oh man,
who he was just hired a few weeks ago. He might not jive with what Brendan Shanahan is looking for. So. If you've made it this far, pat yourself on the back because you are a true hater, my friend. And we all appreciate your hatred. We revel in it as much as you do. And we thank you so much for listening. One last thing, real quick shout out to the Sportsnet panel of about 20 people, 18 of whom picked the Leafs to win the series, including prospect pervert Jason Bucala, who picked the Leafs in 4 to beat the Bruins. Wrong. Sorry, pal. Mark Spector was actually right for once. He picked Bruins in 7, as did Sonny Sachdeva. Picked the Bruins in 7. Everybody else picked the Leafs. Leafs in 4, man, come on. Are we even trying here? Like, that had to be a joke. Like, you might pick the Leafs to win the series. That's one thing. But, like, 4? You thought they were going to sweep the Bruins? Come on. That's ridiculous. We do appreciate you sticking with us this entire time. We had to get this out there. We had to get this off our chest. It's too funny. I know I'm going to spend my part of my Monday listening to some Leafs podcasts and stuff from Sportsnet. I can't wait to hear what comes out of that thing. And Tavares has one more year on his contract, so we're almost through the woods here. And I don't know. I don't know what happens after that, but we'll see. But it has been fun. It has been a fun 6 years, right? Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. Yeah, 6 years. It has been fun so far, and hopefully it continues a little bit more. Okay. We have done enough. We'll be back next week. Like I said, we'll see where we're at. We'll see what we can talk about. We'll see where the playoffs are at. But this week, Weird Islanders, the podcast, check it out on Friday. And then next week, also, on top of Anxiety, we got our mailbag episode. So sign up at the Patreon, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts like the mailbag, and you get to answer your questions, ask questions as well. Follow us on Twitter at Isles Anxiety Pod. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible.com, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Listen to more of their music on Bandcamp and at Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Learn more at fansfirstsports.com. Shop vintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Read and listen to his work at Action Network. We've discussed a lot here for a week in which the Islanders did not play, and all they did was talk to reporters. Any final thoughts here before we sign off? And the Rangers are already up 1-0 in their playoff series. The Dallas Stars are looking to punch their ticket into the second round and a date with the Avalanche. What are you looking forward to in the second round here? Who do you think might emerge from some of these series?
I guess we're just hoping that the Panthers can make everybody happy, because I've got no faith in the Hurricanes, and it's just, I'm sure we'll talk about that more as the series goes on, so I'll save it for them. But yeah, that's the new thing, right? Like we in a weird way, and we should have said right off the jump before we started Master Leaf Theater, if you are new to this, we 100% acknowledge how absurd and that we're losers and haters and all that when we talk about this. Like, there's no reason for us to do it. It's just, it needs to get out there because it drives so many people nuts. And to see so many people, like you said, retweet the John Matisse tweet, and to when we do a Master Leaf Theater to message us, say it was fun and whatever, it does show that, like, this is we are heard. This, or I should say the other way, like, you are heard. That it's not just you out there. Like, we all know how absurd this is, and it is fun to parse through. But yeah, like we all knew the Rangers were going to crush the Capitals. They did. So there was almost no Ranger playoff anxiety, and now it starts to happen. And so you could have almost focused all your Schadenfreude onto the Leafs in round one. And now you have to shift quickly, and looks like the Hurricanes are just going to do what they always do, which is beat the Islanders and then get their lunch handed to them soon thereafter. So congratulations to the Hurricanes. You did it, man. You beat the mighty Islanders. Celebrate. Please, dear God, get your act together. Come on.
Yeah, seriously. Come on, Rod. You got to work those refs. But I don't know. Maybe I have no faith in the Hurricanes either. So, but I have a little more faith in the Bruins or whoever comes out of that series. I really do think the Bruins are very good, although their makeup is a little bit weird. And congrats to the Canucks or Oilers, who one of whom will probably get destroyed by Colorado or Dallas or Vegas, whoever gets out of that series there. If it's Vancouver, then it was a good season. If it was Edmonton, then it was a terrible season. So I'm looking forward to see how that goes too. But we'll be back next week to talk about God knows what. We'll see what brings what comes out of Islanders land. If not, we'll find something to talk about. But we really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much again for listening to Master Leaf Theater, and we'll be back next week and talk to you later. Take care. Bye-bye.